If you worked with some amazing people, from design to product to growth, from startups to large enterprises, you probably got to see how they've turned their ideas into innovations, their improvements to best practices, and create a repeatable winning formula. Hi, I'm Pradeep, and welcome to the Three Keys podcast, where I talk with creators, builders, growers, people that keep reinventing themselves. This podcast focuses on the lessons they've learned along the way and boil them down to three keys they credit for their success. Verlin, good afternoon. It's great to have you. We have done some, fantastic work together, and I've learned a lot from you, over the last few months, and I continue learning from you. And so I want to ask you about, how you manage your work, how you manage relationships. It's not easy to work with some of the big, partners that you do manage. Being inside one, I know. For our guests, if you don't mind, tell us about yourself, tell us about your work, and then how you work with all three big partners.
I'll do that. First of all, thank you very much for spending the time with me. I really appreciate it. At least there's some validation that my 30 years in the business have resulted in something, and somebody's recording something, whether they listen or not. I'm thrilled to hear others that you may interview. No one ever gets respect in their own home, so I'm glad someone else is interested. Like you said, I've here at Theatro, I manage the strategic partnerships we have with some pretty big companies. And when I joined Theatro, I think there was a grand total of 34 of us in the company. Today we're about 134, which is great. Wow. But still, we are small stakes compared to the people that that I work with, whether that be Cisco, Microsoft, Honeywell, or Intel. They're all big companies with big matrix organizations. And so it's entertaining and rewarding and always interesting to work with every one of those companies. So I'm excited for the opportunities here and glad I could share a little bit about it. I've been here at Theatro just over 4 years and spent most of my career in technology solutions, and I've flipped between very large companies like IBM, Motorolla, and Verizon, or very small companies like Theatro today, or a couple of other startups that I've mixed into my career. And so I think I have a unique perspective, having lived on both sides and managed both sides of partnerships as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So for audience, can you tell me what you do at Theatro?
Yeah, my current role is I'm responsible for really creating, driving the strategic relationships we have that allow us to grow our market awareness, our market presence, and fundamentally open more doors for more direct customer conversations. And so that's really my day-to-day responsibility. There are lots of other things that come with that, like working with you to put together how we cooperate together at a very large trade event, and the circus that can sometimes be is a lot of fun. But in the end, the ability to actually bring a combined solution to a customer and really make a difference in their business is what I'm trying to do with these large strategic partners.
And you're right. The trade event that you mentioned, I think that was the first glimpse I had in how your current customer base's expectations, your employees' expectations, Theatro's own expectations, and Cisco's expectations as you work with all the stakeholders. So I have to ask you, Verlin, according to you, what are the three keys in building strategic relationships?
I love the idea of thinking in threes. So for your benefit, I've done that, and then I'm going to give you a free fourth item for free.
Nice.
I'll run through them quickly, and then we can discuss each one. Number one, I am a huge fan of people. And I think to have a successful alliance, you need to have people that not necessarily know each other, but quickly understand each other, are compatible, see the world in highly similar ways, and are able to then put their heads together to really create something new. So I think people and your relationship with people is important. When it comes to Cisco, obviously, you're important to our relationship. Donald's important to our relationship. And then others that we've worked with, like Amit, the head of US retail, or Bill Farnsworth, Global Retail Solutions. Those kinds of commonalities and people that we can work with and have trust and confidence in set a really important foundation. Number two is really about complementary solutions. This is kind of an obvious one, but if there's too much overlap, then you get competition and you confuse your organizations, particularly the field sales organizations. And we want to keep things as clear and straightforward for them as possible so that they can deliver solutions to our clients. So having complementary solutions, perfect example, Theatro's solution runs on Wi-Fi in our customers' locations. Well, Cisco has brilliant Wi-Fi technology, not only a large install base, but the capability to adjust to the needs our customers might have as they implement Theatro. So that's huge in having complementary solutions. Number three, I think doesn't get enough attention in strategic alliances. And that is, I think you need to be engaged with customers in the field together immediately. I think that a strategic alliance doesn't reach its potential quick enough if you're not immediately talking to customers, vetting the joint solution, validating with them that there's real value between the two companies. And so immediately, like we've done, connecting at a trade event where we're talking to common customers, or connecting account team to account team like you've been so good at helping us do, really adds to that foundation and is critical. And then the fourth, which is kind of a freebie and very obvious in this case, it sure helps when one of the parties has invested in the other party. Cisco has an investment in Theatro. And so when things may be going wrong or not as smoothly as you would like them to go occasionally, or when you get a little annoyed at some bureaucracy or something else going on, all you have to do is think about, well, they invested millions in us. They have high confidence in us. They have a common interest as we do in us being successful. And remembering that and understanding that really helps put everyone back on an even keel, even when the seas are rocky.
As any corporate venture capital would be happy to hear, that is what drives. That's sort of the secret sauce, right? In a lot of cases. But I want to get back to the people aspect. When you have multiple stakeholders, it's invariable that each of them will have their own agenda, right? In a good way, their work agenda, their goals. So how do you manage? I understand the relationship that you can build, but I don't want to say competing, but sort of differing agendas, slightly differing agendas. How do you manage those expectations among all the stakeholders?
Well, I think you identify a really important point. And I think right up front, you want to understand each party's objectives. Not only their formal objectives, we have a business plan, Cisco has a business plan. We can say, here are our revenue objectives, our new logo objectives, our joint solution objectives that are kind of quantitative and on the table and published. But what are our informal objectives? Are we trying to change a part of the marketplace? Are we trying to introduce a solution that's never been there before? And really understand each other's points of view and objectives. And then have the personal capability of melding those together. Something that in the past, I would have used a political analogy. It doesn't apply today because no one wants to compromise and put things together in politics. But to be successful with people in these relationships and partnerships, you have to be able to meld those objectives together and create a common set of objectives where when each succeeds, the other does too, and they recognize it.
That's a great point. So there is transparency in that. You bring everybody to the table at the same time. Make sure you clear everything out in terms of what each person's trying to achieve.
Right.
You're off to a good start. Yeah, that's a great point. For the complementary services piece, how do you in a lot of big companies you might have sort of overlapping products or overlapping capabilities.
Hmm.
How do you tiptoe around that and still create that complementary structure?
Yeah, I think a little bit of it comes back to the prior point. You have to be very open and transparent about it. There can't be a hidden agenda. The minute you discover a hidden agenda, trust is destroyed, right? And so it's important that we're very upfront. If we think we compete with each other, for instance, if Cisco WebEx Teams in some way overlaps with Theatro's communication capabilities, it's smart to identify it right up front, identify whether that's going to be an issue in the target markets we're going after, or identify if there's a change of strategy that may be applicable to either one of the parties in order to adjust and maximize the return for everyone. So again, it's being very open and honest. The second is you've got to be creative. There are joint solutions that when you start a strategic alliance, you may have no idea that you have a complementary solution. So you have to be willing to be creative and listen and watch what's going on. A good example is the discussions we've had around Call Manager. You know, who could have imagined an integration between Call Manager, a telephony solution, and Theatro, which is a totally separate kind of communication solution that doesn't attach to telephony at all. And yet we've not only envisioned a potential solution, we've done some initial prototyping, and we've engaged a customer who we think is interested. And because of that, now additional interest is being created. I'd venture to say a year ago when Cisco was doing their due diligence, they didn't even think about that kind of a joint solution. So you have to be open to that pivot, and I'm encouraged that many of those still exist to be had.
And that validates your point number three, right? Basically, immediate customer engagement. In a way, we are creating our own MVP
Mm.
to test with the customer. So usually, when a startup is developing an MVP, you get any and all resources you can, however you can. Whether it's an angel fund, seed fund, you hire your first two people, co-founders putting together the basic product. But in this scenario, how do you get the teams to assign time and money and resources to create that MVP that's required to find the first customer or the first joint customer?
I think that's where bringing the right experience and talent to the table really helps. I'm not bragging about myself because you're very similar, and there are others on both of our teams that have these similar qualities. But if you've got some background in product management and new product introductions in the marketplace, if you've got some experience with architecting customer solutions and delivering new customer solutions, and if you have experience in negotiating all of with multiple parties at the same time to really create a solution that's implemented at an end user, pulling all of those together helps you do this the right way. So the fact that we have a CEO who's very experienced from the Cisco side and understands the Cisco product set and culture, at least historically.
Mm-hmm.
From your side, you understand startups very well in the way that they think and the way that they approach the world. And my background with product management and product development, between our skill sets, we're able to influence the right people to have the right discussions. So I can reach out to our sales team and say, hey, I have this idea. I think your customer might be interested. And there's a high likelihood that that's true. And then with that little seed of interest to start, we can build on that, right? In my career, every successful product launch I've seen, from small companies to monster companies like IBM, has included at least one or a small handful of what I would call sponsor customers for the project. And if you don't have those, your chances of success are far less.
That's right. And our ability to bring all the people together, ideate on finding a complementary solution, and then basically going through each of our customer bases, trying to find that one
Yeah.
common customer that would step up and say, yes, I'm happy to try this out.
Mm-hmm.
All of that requires, in a manner of speaking, a bridge between two entities, right? So, as a strategic investor and as a portfolio company, you and I are two ends of the bridge. What advice do you have? And what do you think is the key, expanding on that strategic investment piece, for startups to find the right corporate investor? What should they look for, do you think?
That's a great question. And I'm going to fall back on, finding the right investor of any kind, whether it's a corporate investor, a VC investor, an angel investor. Culture means everything, right? If you take a large investment from someone who has a totally different kind of culture, a totally different point of view on the world, it's going to fail. So I know as we looked at potential investors in our company, we disqualified many, many potential investors based on kind of their view of the world and the cultural sensitivity that they had. Theatro, as you've learned, has a pretty unique culture for startups, particularly VC-funded startups. The anything but glitzy headquarters that we have, the anything but glitzy furniture or executive briefing center, the fact that we all basically live and work in the lab when we're allowed to be there, is a very unique culture and very different from some of the cultures of other startups. And so it was important to have a strategic investor who understood that and appreciated it and saw the benefit of having that. The second is, if you're going to get a strategic investor, it has to be someone who truly believes in the solution. And of course, that's natural. People aren't going to part with large sums of money unless they have a real belief. But it can't be just a belief on paper. It can't be just a numbers-based belief. You have to have people that are passionate about the solution and really see the benefit that can bring, because you're going to run into speed bumps along the way where the only thing that will overcome the speed bump is passion. And if you don't have that passion, you're going to lose opportunities that you would have had otherwise.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? And
yeah,
I should ask
totally.
you, what do you think? Because you've made several of these investments.
No, it's spot on, right? I mean, speaking of culture, as you were talking about culture, I was thinking about Chris's weekly newsletter, right? I enjoy reading that on Sunday evenings. Yep.
And I won't spend a lot of time explaining it for your viewers and listeners here, but literally every single week, almost every employee in the company submits content for this newsletter. There's a managing editor that pulls it all together on Saturday morning, ships it over to the CEO, Chris, and Chris literally spends his Sunday afternoon, usually I'm sure with a couple of drinks, doing the final edits and publishing this newsletter to all of our employees, 100%, to all of our investors.
400-week mark was just recently. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
It blows my mind to think about that kind of effort. But to your point, it brings the company together. Everyone has a common view of customers, which are the first topic in the newsletter. Then they get a common view of partners, which is the second topic in the newsletter. Then they get a common view of what's happening in product and development, the third topic of the newsletter. And then you learn something about some employees or some special holiday event that's going on somewhere in the company. And you all feel like you have that one thing in common.
Yeah. The only thing missing is sitting around the big table in the lab, not in the glitzy office.
That is true. Yeah, we don't put enough pictures in of Theatro itself.
Yeah. Well, this is great, Verlin. Thank you for your time. As always, I love our chats, and looking forward to many more.
It's a pleasure. I appreciate your time, Pradeep, and I want to say that I've learned a lot from you as well. Proves that you can teach an old dog new tricks, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.
Great.
Talk to you
Bye.
soon. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening and learning from them as I did. If you'd like to share your feedback, or if you think I should interview somebody that you worked with in the past, please reach out to me on Twitter @ppaniari. Until next time,